Okay, thank you for joining me and thank you so much for being here. With Shark Week kicking off this week, it is the perfect time to dive into the largely underloved Shark Attack franchise. Ranging from stock sharksploitation to bullshit sci-fi madness, these films each bring their own spin to the terror beneath the waves. From suspenseful thrills to non-stop action, let's explore what makes this Shark franchise, okay, definitely not a must-watch, but let's get into it. Starting with 1999's Shark Attack. After his friend goes missing at his jungle research lab, super hot, totally a scientist, Casper Van Dien teams up with that missing buddy's sister to do a science. This is the kind of creature feature where the antagonists really are the shitty people, all of the titular shark attacks being caused by human experimentation, but not the fun kind that makes the shark their own sentient beings or grow like multiple heads. Like, the actual sharks feel like the most tertiary part of this movie, unfortunately. When we do get sharks, we are presented with a juxtaposition that immediately took me out of this movie and always kind of does, but that might be because I am so ingrained in shark stock footage thanks to years of Shark Week that it is painfully obvious that all the sharks were filmed in the open ocean, which is normal, except all of the shark attacks in this movie are supposed to be taking place in a very murky as fuck river that actually has a bottom, so you can see where that doesn't add up. Casper Van Dien and Ernie Hudson largely carry a very rough script. Hudson especially feels like he's having fun chewing cigars between awkwardly filmed and paced car and boat chases. There is also a little through line about the locals warming up to the scientists that I thought was one of the few aspects of the movie that actually kind of worked. Then there's Shark Attack 2 from 2000. This is my favorite kind of sequel, the kind that has literally nothing to do with its predecessor. Outside of this featuring sharks, it doesn't have a thing to do with Shark Attack 1, and that's fine. It probably works in this movie's benefit, swerving tone from an action thriller with some horror elements to more of the horror thriller you might expect. Where the first movie felt like a bad action movie, this actually feels like a Jaws. I would go so far as to say I prefer a lot of this over at least Jaws 3D, which this takes at least some of the plot points from, with a lot of the movie focusing on holding a great white shark in a water park. I am not by any means saying this should have been some kind of Jaws sequel. There are many technical shots of the shark where the animatronic looks like a toy, and there is a ton of awkward dialogue. The actual shark attacks are also overcut and use a little too much shark stock footage, but again, it's kind of what we get here. But at least they all take place in the open ocean this time, and the stock footage matches. The cast doesn't necessarily have the star power that the previous movie had, but you can tell they're at least giving it a really solid effort with a very lackluster material. Would I come back to this on my own? Probably not. But if someone said they wanted a legally distinct Jaws that really wanted to be a Jaws, I could put this on and have some fun. Shark Attack 3, Megalodon from 2002. Shark Attack 3 manages to double and triple down on the absurdity while somehow improving a lot of the pacing and tightness in the production. I will never argue the effects of this movie. The taking of stock footage and enlarging it to make a Megalodon has never been convincing, but it is fun. That being said, when they use a regular-sized great white as a stand-in for a baby Meg, they do a much better job of incorporating that stock footage than either of the movies that came before. We aren't trying to do anything fancy with our discount Jaws this time besides that main gimmick of a Megalodon, shark attack, hot guy fighting to close the beaches for safety, capitalism wants to keep them open. The only difference is this time the shark gets significantly bigger in the final act. Like, pretty fucking big. I'd also argue that a lot of the line readings in this production are less awkward, more natural, and hit harder. I like the second Shark Attack more than the first, but I think Shark Attack 3 makes leaps and bounds of improvements when it comes to filmmaking. I cannot wait to see where this series goes next. Two-Headed Shark Attack from 2012. Oh, this was not the turn I was expecting in the Shark Attack franchise. All of this movie focuses on a small boat of research students crashing on a crumbling atoll while getting picked off by a big ol' hungry shark with two heads. Why does the shark have two heads? Who cares? The movie sure doesn't. It has tits to show for 5 seconds at a time. I will say this movie taking place on what is essentially an island that self-destructs on its own is both amazingly convenient and fairly original as a setup. I do not hate it entirely, but it ain't good. It is hardly fun unless you are in the headspace for some egregiously tough dialogue, and a cast that does not seem to be too enthused to be involved at any level, unfortunately. If the titular shark and its double penetrating methods were better done or more original, that at least would be something to grasp onto, but as it stands, this movie might as well have been a great movie about two best buddy sharks that just swim side by side and chomp in unison. And I also know I shouldn't expect better, but your made-for-the-movie shark animation should not look like stark footage from a prehistoric shark special on Discovery Shark Week. Unrelated, I put this movie on both Tubi and Pluto TV, and either this movie has the worst audio quality I've ever heard, or they both got sent a corrupt master file, because it sucked. Three-headed shark attack from 2015. So the answer to the question of what is causing the shark to have multiple heads having as simple a solution as pollution is weirdly brilliant. Considering I can pull up a video of a two-headed tortoise at any given moment, it gives us a reason for the thing to exist while also giving us a very flexible plot point. In this instance, having the cast studying the big-ass Pacific garbage island, it makes for a slightly more cohesive story that lets the characters be the slightest bit more than the flat characters we got when old Sharky had just two heads. It could do far more, though, to incorporate the bigger names they have evidently had for like a day of shooting. We get no Danny Trejo, then you get Samuel L. Jackson, like we should care about whoever his character was. The titular tri-headed shark itself is so much more than its two-headed predecessors, though. While it doesn't do anything absurdly ridiculous yet, the animators clearly had more fun this time around, giving the heads different personality. Until the hydro mechanic kicks in and it looks like a bunch of red rockets. Writing this a few days after the fact, I don't remember any of the kills specifically standing out, but I don't know, at least they don't stand out for the wrong reasons. Disappointing though still, I guess. Five-headed shark attack from 2017. Am I the only person to spend the first 40 minutes of this movie wondering when the shark is going to grow another head, only to realize the last head is just the tail? Did I miss that in an establishing shot? Because I do not want to rewatch this to find out. Plot-wise, if you are still here for the plot, is more or less the same thing we got the last movie, minus the very minor trash origin subplot. We kind of switch up the characters, though, and their motivations do take things in a slightly different direction. Not that any of these directions are ones that you have ever not seen before. Oh, and the shark is back to somehow having no personality, with the exception of the doofy-looking tail that has to be always flailing about. We are also still not doing anything fun with the premise when it comes to the kills, or at all the more I think about it. It just bonks a bunch of boats and noms however many people kind of line up in a row. If I had to fish for a compliment, I would throw at the bone that it is maybe the best shot of the many-headed shark attack movies. Six-headed shark attack from 2018. So I weirdly do not hate Six-Headed Shark Attack, especially when holding it up against the other multi-headed Shark Attack movies. Not that it is like a good movie, but for the first time it feels like we are actually having fun. I have quite literally been anxiously awaiting the clip I have seen so many times out of context where our titular shark climbs onto the beach like he belongs in the Addams Family. I also genuinely do not hate the larger setup for the cast. Shitty couples on a shitty couples retreat is a solid setup that makes kind of sense. Does all the script make sense narratively? Sure doesn't. Are the main cast written to be some of the most one-dimensional characters on screen? Definitely. But this at least feels like a thing. I don't know how to describe it, but like Six-Headed Shark Attack feels way more tangible than 2, 3, or 5. Also, do we know why we changed the overall shape of the shark? Because while I hate how fucking dumb it looks to have a shark head on the tail, this design was not the answer. We are also back to not really giving any of the shark's personality whatsoever, except when it is ripping off its own heads to use as a projectile. What? And I thought that was it when I decided this was the bit I was going to do. But then I discovered that there are so many more Shark Attack movies lurking beneath the surface. So get ready for part 2 of this Sharkathon next weekend to cap off Shark Week with a splash. Until then, though, stay sharp and watch out for those fins.